did an interview, like you're interviewing us. I interviewed Ray.
Huh.
I asked him that out of all your films, which are your favorite? Which is your favorite?
Huh.
So he said, of course, Trilogy, because that was my initial beginning, and I have a soft corner for that. And he said, Charulata. And then he said, Arunetin Rati. He said, you are in that film.
It's interesting, because I've rarely been around anyone who was close to Satyajit Ray. The first one I saw was Teen Kanya, which I saw when I was probably 18 years old because, for whatever reason, in the video store in Texas where I lived, this movie was playing, and sort of anthology film, short stories, and I watched this film knowing nothing about who that is or even how to say the name, and I love this movie.
You got a vision what Ray would have thought all the time, and I had that vision. I used to keep that storyboard, I used to keep his notes, I used to call Sandeep. Nowhere that I wanted to take a decision as a filmmaker, I wanted to take a decision as somebody who's just helping how Ray would have loved to see it.
You're watching The Hollywood Reporter India at Cannes 2025. Associate partner Longitude 77. Travel partner Air France. Hydration partner Vedika Himalayan Spring Water. And luxury mobility partner BMW. Sharmila ji, Wes, Shivendra, welcome to The Hollywood Reporter India. Such a pleasure to be sitting here with you. And Shivi, I want to start by just congratulating you. Film Heritage Foundation, 4th year in a row. You have a film in Cannes Classics, and this year you have 2 films.
Yeah, I think the first film is a Sri Lankan film, which such an important film, Genulamai, the girl, Sumitra Perry's. And one of the big things in the foundation is to now support films, not just in India, but across the world, and especially those films which people find it difficult to even see, or I have not seen it. It comes from within you. The films you really want to see, or you've experienced when as a student of film, and you want to bring them back and show it the way you had seen it in point. So I think that's where we are. And Arunetin Ratri is not just my creation, it's the creation of the Criterion, the Film Foundation, because it's them who really put the force behind it. I was just the one who was doing the restoration. So it's really exciting to be here.
Yeah, and the film begins with Wes. A special thanks to Wes Anderson. You've, of course, always talked about the influence that Satyajit Ray had on you. I want you to talk a little bit about what do you take away from him as a director? Because when we see your visual aesthetic, it's very, very different from what he did, right?
Yes.
But and of course, the Darjeeling Limited was dedicated to him. What is it about him that really speaks to you and this film?
Well, it's interesting, because I've rarely been around anyone who was close to Satyajit Ray. And, I've met Sandeep Ray before, but very little direct contact. So in some ways, my ideas of Ray, I hope you tell me if they're accurate. But for me, I know the first one I saw was Teen Kanya, which I saw when I was probably 18 years old because, for whatever reason, in the video store in Texas where I lived, this movie was playing, and sort of anthology film, short stories, and I watched this film knowing nothing about who that is or even how to say the name, and I love this movie. I was very taken with these stories and these actors, and then in the course of time, I saw, Pada Panchali was not even in a good, the Apu films, which now have been restored for quite a long time and may have been shared all over the world in perfect form. Even then, they weren't, the copies were bad. But I got to know over the films a filmmaker who I felt worked in the most independent way, the most intelligent kind of writer, that the sensibility of this man, it spoke to me because he made one film after another, after another, after another, his inventions, and they're very literary films. And what I saw, and also I saw images of Ray, and I thought, that's what I want to be like, if I can be like that. And I saw images also of of where he lived in Calcutta, which to me looked like these rooms looked like just that's the way that's the image of a movie director to me. So and then later I made a film. I prepared to make a film in India, and I became more and more interested in Ray's music. I knew he had composed music, and I then saw other films that I'd never seen. Charulata is a movie I hadn't seen until quite late. Nayak is a film I didn't see until later, which I loved. That film spoke to me. But Days and Nights in the Forest was virtually unavailable, and the way I saw it was an extremely poor copy from a store with a translation that had been done by somebody who I don't think he really spoke Bengali or English. Yes, but I loved it. It reached me anyway.
Yeah.
And you reached me, in these
How
films.
amazing is she?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Formidable.
Yeah.
And so that to me is, and in a lot of ways it's me projecting, but I feel what I project is right. That's what Ray was like, to me.
No, but you're so right. My God, what a lovely, lovely performance. And there's this one scene where your character is speaking about the death of her mother and her brother, and the camera's just on your face, and you can see the emotion, you almost see the tears, but they don't fall. It never goes into overdoing it, and it was so beautiful. What do you remember about shooting that?
Manikda, we call him Manikda, Satyajit Ray, but his nickname pet name was Manik.
Yes.
So we called him Manikda. So he came to me. He had he never over-instructed. All of us got his handwritten scripts, bound scripts. And we were supposed to read it, but we were not encouraged to memorize any of the dialogues, right? So this particular scene, when it was happening, I was told not to prepare for it. And then he just came very close to me and kind of narrated that scene in a way I could visualize it, I cannot explain the chemistry or how he managed to get through to me, but he did. And that atmosphere of, the forest and the kind of bonding we were doing with each other because it was so hot and we were middle of this. So I think it just came through. Because I was visualizing that, I was at least trying to visualize the forest burning and, and my mother. So that's how it came through, because we really don't know what happens in front of the camera. I mean, there is, like I said, we were not told to prepare, it was more instinctive.
Could you create dialogue? Was he okay with that?
When we were playing the memory game, Robi Ghosh could improvise, he could say whatever he wanted. And he did, and those shots were kept. Because wherever we went with the film, abroad, the moment Robi Ghosh comes on the screen, everybody cheers and laughs, But with Soumitra Chatterjee, he wouldn't let him, move his hand from here to there. Or, he said, no, no, no. So he was getting very frustrated, but I think he felt that the character is so taut and, wanting to win and wanting to do this and competing with everybody else and not knowing who he really is. So perhaps he wanted him bound in a particular way, So I've seen that, and even in the Hindi film that Manikda did, he gave all kinds of liberty to Said Jafri. But
Shatranj ke khiladi.
Shatranj ke khiladi. But Sanjeev Kumar, he told me later that if he moved his elbow from here to here, he would object. Yes. So I think his framing was very important.
Yes.
His framing was important, and all these little things, perhaps, one character is behaving in a particular way, so perhaps the other one shouldn't. He had complete control over his craft. He came to I've never seen a more hardworking director, because he wrote the script, as you know, and he screenplay, and he directed. But he did many other things. In Days and Nights in the Forest, I'm sorry, I'm digressing, Shubhrata Mitra wasn't there, his DOP, so he was operating the camera himself. So from that film, Arunet Din Ratri, Days and Nights of the Forest, he went solo. So he could do practically music.
After that, once he
Yeah.
did it, he kept doing it.
Yes.
That's the Mitra. And did Mitra still shoot? Mitra still did some of the movies with him, right?
No,
up
not
until-
after that.
Not after
Not
that.
after
That was
that,
the
yeah.
last.
Not
Last
Charulata
film, yeah.
was
I
the
see, I see.
last film.
Wow.
Because Shivendra Roy came in.
And then
And
Shomendra
then
Roy
they took,
came.
and then
Yeah.
he took over. Yes.
Yeah, so he, because his budgets were very limited,
Yes.
and Shubhrata was a perfectionist. So he took a long time to arrange his shots. He couldn't afford that
Right.
because we were really making films on a shoestring budget. And we couldn't afford even a third take, really,
Right.
because, you know,
It
it
was
was
film.
expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Film was expensive. So I think perhaps that. Otherwise, Shubhrata was a genius.
He saw a
right?
chance
No,
to
but the
move more, to be
storyboard-
more
So
efficient with the
Charulata,
making.
Did you
Charulata
see the
was the
storyboard?
three
Yes,
of them
I've seen the
together.
storyboards and the
Yeah,
script.
and I was
too.
showing it to
Yeah.
you yesterday.
Yes.
You know, the
Yes.
storyboard
You've
of
seen the
memory
plan.
games
And even
and
our
the plan.
script, you know, Apushamshar and the
Yeah.
other script that we got, he had a little etching, you know, the who's sitting where. So everything was clear. He controlled outdoor as well as indoor. You know, he had total control over his craft. It
I
was
think
really
he
wonderful.
did even the titles for the
Everything.
sequence, which is graphic work that's very interesting and
because
very
he was a-
dynamic.
Yeah.
He was in
yes.
He was in advertising, so he
right.
had that talent. Every aspect, even the sets, what do you call them, art directors. So even that was his wardrobe in Hirok Raja Deshi.
Yeah.
I don't know the
Okay.
English word,
Yeah.
English title, but in Hirok he did the costumes as well.
Gopi Gain also.
Gopi Gayan also. So you know he
Amazing.
was just a solo person. I can't think of any other director who
Who
did
can do all of
who
that.
cover all aspects
Yeah.
of
Yes,
filmmaking.
and also he starts making films from the point of view of someone who's, it's his project. He's not getting a job to make a film.
Yeah.
Well, when you decide you're going to make a film and you have never done it, you have to be some kind of impresario in a way yourself to force the thing to happen, to get the people together and do it. It's that's not the way everyone gets started, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And so gently. I mean, you never felt the pressure of that he's directing you or he's confining you, you're being confined in a particular way. He would come very close to you. He's a tall man, right?
Yes.
So he would bend a little bit and like whisper in your ear what he wanted done so that nobody could hear, especially when he was working with a child. He was very good. And then he left it to us. And if he didn't like something, then he would come and say, can you just do it a little differently? But he was not imposing, you know, I said this and therefore, you know, like we never felt the pressure of working with Satyajit Ray.
Yes, but you feel gentleness in his films.
Very.
I mean, that comes through. But his physicality is quite imposing,
And the voice,
distinguished.
yes.
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 And he was big.
He was.
Yes.
Well, speaking about the memory game, you recreated that in Asteroid
Yes, well,
City.
stole it. Yes, I think. Yes, but you know the way that scene really was done. It's the most beautifully. First of all, the concept of the scene is very odd because it's a game.
Yes.
But we learn about these characters so much while they play these games and they're saying these names, and then the way it's photographed. I mean, the cast is obviously special cast, but the way it's photographed is very striking. And the moment when we choose to start going from face to face, there's a more emotion in this scene than you would think there's any reason to be. And we know, and you know, the fact that Aparna is could play this game all day.
Yes.
And I mean, in fact, and at a certain point, you sort of realize the dynamic. And he and Sumitra Chatterjee is very intelligent character, but he's trying his hardest. And you know, there's a very and what's the name of the one who's the cricket player who he stops. You know,
Shomit
Yes.
Bhatt.
yes,
Yes.
he can't continue. Anyway, this is a scene which I love, and in fact, my family and I began to play this game After I first saw the movie, I started sharing this game because it's a wonderful thing to do. You learn about each other.
Yeah,
playing
but
this
Shobit
game.
is not cerebral, so he doesn't want to play this.
This game.
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
he cannot.
But you know
Yes.
what struck me was the fact that Aparna loses purposely because,
Yes.
you know, it's too much. She doesn't want to hurt his ego. The women in this film are so much more evolved than the men. And that is, of course, the whole point of the film is that they are entitled and they don't see the things that the women do. But this was 55 years ago. Did you have a sense when you were making it that what he was doing was so modern in his sensibility?
No, I don't think at the point of, when we were making the film, we were not really thinking about the film, how it will shape out. We just enjoyed working in it. Of course, when we read the script, but we didn't feel, yes, we felt that these four educated men come to the forest and they can't appreciate the forest or the sunset without the trope of American films or Tarzan or something. So he wants to say that this culturally, if you're not connected to your own images, own things, how can you be culturally superior? Because there's this beautifully simple, elegant Adivasis, the local tribe.
The tribals, yeah.
They're so natural in their habitat, whereas these guys are always pretending or make believe or something like that. So after they come into contact with these two women, they alter a little bit. They don't go back exactly the same way,
Yeah.
all except Shekhar.
Yeah.
And Kabiri Di, the lady who's my sister-in-law.
Yes.
She was so good.
Oh,
She
yes,
was
she was
so
brilliant.
natural,
Yes.
especially in the memory game.
Yeah.
When you see that little, what do you call it?
Tank.
Away from the
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little, do you want a pillow? And let me go and get it. Let
Yes,
me make you
yes, that's very
comfortable.
good.
Yeah,
It was
it's the little moments.
lovely.
Yes.
Yeah. That
Beautiful.
reveals so much.
Yes.
Yes.
Shivi, you've said that every restoration has its own challenges,
Yeah.
right? What were the specific ones of this one?
No, I think when we started the process, it was during COVID. And I remember I had to take a flight and go and see this negative. I really wanted to see whether the original camera negative, because in India, because most of these films are shot on acetate, it's very hard to find the original camera negative. So I got really excited. So I flew to Bhubaneswar, not to Calcutta. There were no flights in COVID. I drove all the way to Calcutta. I found the film in one of the storerooms, and it was the original camera negative, and I couldn't believe it because it was one of my favorite Ray films.
Yes.
So it was also Ray's favorite film. He loves
Yes.
that film.
Oh, it was his
Yeah,
favorite
yeah.
film. Oh, I didn't
It
know
May I
was.
that.
just
Yeah,
interrupt?
yeah, of
Because
course.
I did an interview, like you're interviewing us, I interviewed Ray. So I asked him that out of all your films, which are your favorite? Which is your favorite? So he said, of course, trilogy, because, that was my initial beginning, and I have a soft corner for that. And then he said, Charulata. And then he said, Orane Din Ratri. He said, you are in that film. And it's Orane Din Ratri. And he said that is,
Wow.
his,
How lovely.
yeah.
Yeah,
How
amazing.
lovely.
So when you find the original camera negative, you want to get it scanned. You want to begin. And this film, I saw it as a student at film school at FTI. And I remember the title sequence of this film and the music to the title sequence, these four friends. It was just an incredible sort of impact it had in almost creating such a rhythm, such a simplicity in the jungles of Palamu, which is, you've hardly seen, and there's these four friends. And it just sort of time just passes through, and it looks so real, and it's so quick and everything. And I just loved the film. So I was excited that I wanted to get. And then, of course, thanks to Margaret of the Film Foundation and Peter Becker and Fumiko, we started working on it. And it took us a while. Most of the restoration was done in Bologna. But the challenge was the color grading, because, how do you grade a Satyajit Ray film especially when you've got the back of Subrata Mitra. And I must tell you, I kept Subrata Mitra's work in mind and
Yes.
graded this film, even though he never
You
shot
didn't
that
shoot
film.
it. Yes.
And that's how the grading was.
Right.
I
Okay.
worked on it, keeping in
Yeah.
mind the work Subrata did in, his early films, especially the Apu trilogy.
But you have no other reference. You
No
have to
other
make
reference,
those
yeah.
choices.
So I was making that
Yes.
reference because even Sandeep said I was not on that shoot.
And I don't know.
I don't know, but it was his favorite too. And I think the first person I showed was to Sandeep, and he was so excited. And also the subtitling, I have to tell you that. It's not easy because we were trying to look at the original subtitle. He did everything, as you said, ma'am.
Yeah.
Everything in the film. So you've got to have the subtitles. But we couldn't find the original subtitles. So we got hold of Indrani Mazumdar, who was the only person he trusted on his work because he could do both. It was only his time because he, to find time
Yes.
sometimes to do English or Bengali. And we did that whole. So it was just an amazing experience. What is so lovely about my work, which from a filmmaker, is that you get to see shot by shot.
Yes.
Almost like a Steenbeck. That you're sitting on a Steenbeck, you're going back and forth, you're seeing which is what you continue to learn and learn and learn. And I think that's so lovely about restoration.
But how wonderful it is that, because of these guys, we can see those films.
Absolutely.
Because I remember seeing Devi before it was restored. I mean, that the first scene of the Bishorjon, I mean, nothing was sparkling. It was all dead. You couldn't hear. The audio wasn't clear. And then when you saw the restored version, so really, thank you. I mean, you're such wonderful
And we want
people.
to thank,
all of you, Criterion.
we want to
and
thank Wes,
all of them.
the Film Foundation,
Yes,
and
Film
the
Foundation,
Criterion.
Criterion.
All our partners because
Yes.
because
This
because
is
it's
just
a joint,
passion for
it's-
good
It is.
films.
It
you
is.
know.
Yes.
And it's so
not-
required. And
yeah.
there's not enough people who do it.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
it's not commerce. It's,
Yeah.
it's more than
Oh yeah,
that.
there's
It's
No,
no
I-
passion.
commerce.
Not in this. But I do remember getting the email from Margaret
Right.
that when you had found those cans of green plastic cases,
Yes.
and I have the email still, and I
Yeah,
thought, oh,
yeah.
really, it's there.
It's
It's
there.
there.
How
It's-
lovely.
At that moment where I thought it's really going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I'd been asking about it for some time before that. Yes.
It was, to just get clearances and just to make people.
Yes.
In India, the awareness is something which is very not easy to get through people, to make them really feel that nobody's taking away this film.
Yes.
Because when you say you want to restore, they think you're going to make lots of money.
Right.
And they don't realize that it's just
We have to be realistic about
realistic.
this and understand.
And also that restoration is all about not to do too much on anything.
Yes.
You cannot.
You can't alter it.
You cannot alter it.
Yeah.
You've got to keep exactly. You've got to vision what Ray would have thought all the time, and I had that vision. I used to keep that storyboard. I used to keep his notes. I used to call Sandeep. Nowhere that I wanted to take a decision as a filmmaker. I wanted to take a decision as somebody who's just helping how Ray would have loved to see it.
Yes.
How lovely. That's so lovely. I have to ask you, I read that you were shooting for Aradhna, Mere Sapno Ki Rani, the iconic song, when you were offered this film.
No, what happened was I was shooting for Aradhna and somebody in Filmistan. And somebody came to me because, as you know, it's a long walk to the office. He said, there's some call for you. And we didn't have cell phones or anything those days. So I walked to the office. I said, but something important perhaps. And that was Manikda on the other side. He said, will you work in my film? I need you for 1 month in month of May. And so naturally, without thinking, I said, yes, of course, I will. Then when put the phone down, I said, oh God, I'm committed to Shakti Samanta, because he was doing that Mere Sapno Ki Rani, I mean, that exact May. And Rajesh Khanna, one of our actors, he was very busy because he had won a talent contest and he was indebted to 12 producers. So he had to give dates to everybody, and they were all making a film. So his dates were very precious. So I said, well, Shakti ji, I just have to do this film. But somehow I negotiated and managed to come to Satyajit Ray. Yeah.
And
and
you?
then went back to that other film.
But I think that your instinct was right.
Yeah,
What he
of
wanted to hear was immediate yes, not I need to solve a problem.
No.
Yes first, solve problem later.
No.
That's what.
Most certainly, I
yes.
didn't want to give my problem to Ray. I
No,
wasn't going
no.
to risk it in any way.
What was
I
your
gave the problem to Shakti Samant instead.
yes? What was the if I may ask the dynamic with him? Was he a friend like a peer, or because he was older, or was it more like a?
You know, I worked with him when I was 13
Yes.
in the world of Apu.
Yes,
So he
yes.
introduced me to film. So I always treated him with a little bit of awe, a little bit of respect, you know, like we give
Fatherly.
to our father.
Yes.
So I never really became a pal. Like
Yes.
I couldn't, you know, like Reena would smoke with him and all that, and I couldn't do that. And in fact, in Aranidin Ratri's shooting, we were staying in different. Tell me if I'm taking too long.
Not at all.
Simi and Kabiri Di stayed in a bungalow because there was a paucity of space there to stay. They stayed in a sort of a next door village in a plush forest bungalow. And Satyajit Ray and Soumitra Chatterjee with other crew members stayed in another place. And Shomit Bhanjo, Shubhendu, and Robi Ghosh and I stayed in another place. So I had the chowkidar's room and I had a water cooler, and in dry weather it worked very well. And these guys were in a shed with tin roof. So Robi da would say, I'm Robi Pora, Robi roast, and Shubhendu would say, I'm sorted, Shubhendu, etc. So they had this.
Because they were so hot.
So
Yes.
hot.
Yeah.
And we had such a wonderful, wonderful outdoors. We would go and dance with the Sautals. You could hear the elephant. But you cannot imagine how hot it was. So we could only work 5:30 to it's about 9. And then again from 6 to, from 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock. Otherwise, you just couldn't. So the rest of the time was just chatting and bonding. And we became such close friends, you know, all of us. It was really a tough location.
Yeah.
But the work was so. He wanted that time because the trees were leafless, you know, the skeletal trees. He wanted a particular look. And that was only possible in that month because then the rains came soon after. And before that, you know, it was all leafy and
Yes.
lush. So he wanted that sweet, stark look.
Yes.
So I think altogether that atmosphere really builds up, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
even his
it
poster
does.
has that.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
poster, the original poster he made.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, this is so lovely. I could be here forever just listening to your
Yeah.
stories.
Me
It's
too.
so
I have
great.
more questions.
Please ask. Ask for
well,
me.
Well, you know what the other what I wanted to know is a bit about the personality of Soumitra Chatterjee because he's you know, we see him through so many of the films, and there's a great for me there's a tremendous kind of warmth, and there's some wonderful kind of not exactly heroic feeling because it's flawed characters always, but like the hero of a movie. And I'm wondering what his personality was like, because sometimes the personality of an actor can be so different than their personality that you experience in the cinema.
He was very childlike, you know, very curious, and his laughter was sort of straight from the heart, you know, ha ha ha, you know, like. So he was very childlike and always wanting to learn. He was just not a great actor, but he was well informed on sports and politics and every aspect of life. And his relationship, Manikda, was like Guru Shishya. So how do you say that? A
Guru and
teacher.
disciple.
Guru
Yeah.
and
Yes,
disciple,
yeah.
yes.
And he had tremendous respect, and he was always asking him questions, which I didn't.
Yes.
He would say, why is this and why is that? And so he
wanted to be directed.
he wanted to understand Ray, and, you know, so he was a wonderful person, really. I mean, he could paint also. Towards the
And
end of his
poetry.
life, he was painting.
poetry.
And
He
Yes,
was
yes, yes.
writing. He was really a Renaissance man. and not at all interested in money. And he didn't go to.
Yeah.
A lot of people went to Bombay because there was more money, more fame, and he was offered. Sham Benegal offered him, but he didn't go
He
because
stayed.
he said, for an actor, it's important to know the language.
Mm.
And the way I know Bengali, the way I can speak my lines or understand the character, I won't be able to do it in Hindi. So
Right.
that way, he was a very honest person and not driven by commercial gains like his mentor. So I mean, he was my dearest friend because we started work together
At the beginning.
and stayed in touch throughout. He was a wonderful, we would recite together Tagore. He was again, knew everything that is there to know about Tagore.
Yes.
So he was really a wonderful human being, very
Very
childlike. And his laughter, I went to Catherine Berge, did a documentary on uh, um, Shomitro. So I went to interview him or talk to him while he was working. So he was smoking. I said, "You're still smoking? I told you then two cigarettes after lunch and dinner." So he kind of got completely flabbergasted. Then he realized that what I'm referring to, Bushangsha. He said, "Ha ha ha ha." He laughed so much. So that laughter was so contagious and was a mirror to his soul.
Yes.
A very childlike, very
Yeah.
childlike.
And in Days and Nights in the Forest, the whole group of these men are
Yeah.
so childlike.
Yeah.
But he's the most complex
Very
character.
complex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I could be here forever listening
Yeah.
to these stories, but I think you have a red carpet to get to.
True. I
All
also
of
want
you.
to know about Nayak, the hero. I want to hear about the making of that, but another time.
Yes.
We only talked about one movie. But anyway, thank you so much.
But can I end with a question to you, Wes? Because
Yes, of
this is
course.
something I read in the New Yorker. Richard Brody wrote this after Asteroid City, and he said about you, he doesn't create and direct a scene for any outer dramatic necessity, but under the intense inner urgency of what it means to him personally. Every daub of paint and detail of hairstyling is invested with the fervor of his own emotional memory. He himself, not his cast, is the supreme method actor of his own films. How lovely.
Yes, wonderful. He's a very good writer.
He is. And would you agree?
Well, I couldn't even begin to agree or not. I love this description. I love the idea of being seen that way.
Yeah.
And I sort of relate to what he describes a bit too. I like it. I would never question it, but I would feel uncomfortable saying more than that. But that's very nice.
Thank you to all of you. And
Thank you.
thank you for bringing such incredible movies back to the two of you. And of course, you are an institution. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. What a
Thank you.
pleasure.
You're watching The Hollywood Reporter India at Cannes 2025. Associate partner, Longitude 77. Travel partner, Air France. Hydration partner, Vedika Himalayan Spring Water. And luxury mobility partner, BMW.